You know, when we talk about the Puerto Rican community in Florida, my mind, and I think most people's, it jumps to the modern era.
Right. Post-World War II, maybe the big migrations to Central Florida. That's the common story.
Exactly. But what if that whole assumption is off by, I don't know, 200 years?
It is. It is off by about that much. If we dig into the archives from the 1700s, we find something completely different. We find what some historians call a Caribbean Mediterranean.
A Caribbean Mediterranean. Okay, that sounds fantastic, but I'm guessing you mean something a little more strategic than a vacation spot.
Just a bit. Today, we're really diving into how Puerto Rico and St. Augustine, Florida, were operating as, well, basically a single unified axis.
And we're not just looking at old textbooks. We've got military records from Segovia, parish records, I mean, the real stuff.
Precisely. And while, yes, Juan Ponce de Leon made the first link back in 1513, the relationship really matures in the 18th century. You have to understand, this was the era of the Bourbon reforms.
Okay, Bourbon reforms. Sounds very official. What does that actually mean for the people living there?
Think of it like a huge corporate restructuring of the Spanish Empire. The crown wanted to modernize everything, especially defense. And Florida went from being this, lonely outpost to a key part of that system.
So if you're ramping up defense, who's actually manning the walls?
Mm.
Are they shipping soldiers all the way from Madrid?
Not entirely, and this is so important. In 1741, they organized the Regimiento Fijo de Puerto Rico, the fixed regiment.
And these weren't men from Spain.
Largely no. They were Creole people born in the Americas, and they became the defensive backbone of Spanish Florida.
So you have Puerto Ricans defending Florida in the 1700s. But running a military is expensive. How on earth were they paying for all of this?
Well, often they weren't. Not on time, anyway. But on paper, they relied on something called the situado.
The situado. It sounds like something out of a mob movie.
It was basically a subsidy, a financial lifeline connecting the treasuries of Mexico, San Juan, and St. Augustine. St. Augustine literally couldn't function without those cash ships arriving via Puerto Rico.
Which leads to my favorite detail from these records. Since that money didn't always show up.
It rarely showed up on time.
Right. So the soldiers couldn't just stand around. They had to, hustle.
It was an absolute necessity. The records are full of it. Soldiers holding down second jobs as shoemakers, bakers, masons, just to feed their families.
I love that. The guy fixing your shoe is the same guy loading the cannon later that day.
Exactly. And because they were working in town, they weren't isolated. They were part of the community. And when you look at who was in that community, the picture gets incredibly diverse.
Good point. So it wasn't just European Spaniards working these double shifts.
Far from it.
Yeah.
This brings us to Fort Mose, established in 1738.
The first legally sanctioned free black town in North America.
A huge deal, and it connects directly to Puerto Rican military traditions where free men of color, the records call them partos and morenos, serve in militias to gain social status.
And this wasn't just some informal handshake deal, right? There were actual laws backing this up.
Yes, a legal code called the Siete Partidas. It provided actual avenues to freedom. It's totally different from the English colonies. You get these incredible leaders like Francisco Menendez, a true Atlantic Creole.
Yeah, Atlantic Creole, what does that mean exactly?
It means they were cultural chameleons. They could navigate African, Spanish, indigenous cultures and languages, true survivors.
And we actually have a snapshot of this whole mix, don't we? A census.
We do. The 1786 census by Father Thomas Hassett. It's like a demographic lens, and it shows a wild mix of Spanish, Criollos, and what they called castas.
Castas being the term for people of mixed ancestry.
Correct. It was a very stratified society, for sure, but they were all living and working in this tight-knit military world. But then, the music stops. 1763.
The Treaty of Paris.
Spain cedes Florida to Britain. Just imagine that scene. Over 3,000 people, soldiers, Canary Islanders, Christian Indians, have to pack up their entire lives and evacuate St. Augustine.
A massive displacement for that time. Devastating. Where did they even go?
Most went to Cuba, but the records show entire units and families filtering back into Puerto Rico, keeping those connections alive. Because in 1784, the second Spanish period begins.
The return.
They come back. And here's the really fascinating part. The Floridanos who returned often brought family members who had been born during that exile in the Caribbean.
So the ocean wasn't a barrier, it was a highway.
It was a Caribbean highway. Researchers today use the hojas de servicio, the service records, to do this incredible genealogical work tracking families as they move between these islands.
It just completely reframes Florida, not as some peninsula at the edge of the world.
But as a central functional part of a circum-Caribbean network, it challenges our whole idea of what local history even is.
It really does. It makes you wonder, how many people in Florida today might have an identity rooted in this forgotten 18th century circulation of families, all hidden away in fading ink in an archive in Spain?
Something to think about.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.